The early morning light had barely brushed the horizon when a creaking, timeworn bus pulled slowly into the modest bus station of Riverton, a quiet town whose narrow streets and faded storefronts whispered secrets of days gone by. Today, however, a new story was about to begin. Amid the hum of the engine and the murmur of scattered passengers, a small family made its entrance into this unfamiliar world. Stepping off the bus with deliberate, measured steps were twin siblings Kai and Lila, their dark skin and matching determined gazes a beacon of quiet strength against the backdrop of a town unaccustomed to diversity. With them walked their mother, Zara, a woman of graceful endurance whose eyes shone with both hope and a hint of apprehension. Zara's accent was soft yet imbued with wisdom handed down through generations, carrying with it proverbs and lessons learned from a heritage rich in tradition and sacrifice. "Remember, my darlings," she murmured as they navigated the bustling bus platform, "every new place brings its own challenges and opportunities. Stand tall, and let your spirit guide you." Her words, though spoken in the quiet cadence of reassurance, held an unyielding promise, that no matter the obstacles ahead, their inner light would never be dimmed. Kai and Lila exchanged a look, a silent understanding that had been forged over years of shared experiences, secret training sessions, and unspoken victories over life's adversities. They had been taught from a young age that silence could be both a shield and a signal. In the midst of the chaos of immigration and the turbulent echoes of prejudice, their calm demeanors masked a fierce spirit honed through years of martial arts training. Their measured posture and composed expressions were not signs of fear or resignation, but rather the outward manifestations of strength tempered by discipline and purpose. As they made their way down the street toward their new home, the residents of Riverton could not help but notice the striking newcomers. Whispers rippled through the morning crowd at a nearby corner diner, curiosity mingled with caution. "Look at them, such elegance in a place like this," one local murmured, his tone a mix of intrigue and uncertainty. Others, less kind in their minds, let their prejudices show in hushed remarks that soon blended into the ambient noise of daily life. Yet, Kai and Lila moved as though the weight of whispered judgments were nothing more than a distant echo, an echo against which they had learned to stand firm. The bus station, with its peeling paint and splintered benches, became the backdrop for the first chapter of their Riverton story. Zara gathered her children close as they climbed the steps leading to a modest rental house on Maple Street, a humble abode that, despite its modesty, pulsed with hope and the promise of a new beginning. The air was heavy with the scent of dew-soaked grass, and every footstep on the cracked pavement resonated with an unspoken determination. Here, in this small town that had never seen faces quite like theirs, every new day promised both the challenge of being the other, and the possibility of transforming that otherness into strength. Inside the small house, worn-out photographs and keepsakes from a homeland steeped in rich cultural heritage adorned the sparse walls. Though the home was simple, it carried memories of laughter, music, and ancient tales of warriors and healers, a legacy that would now imbue the lives of Kai and Lila with a legacy of resilience and honor. Zara, aware of the hardships that lay ahead in a community where tradition sometimes clashed with modern prejudice, prepared a modest meal in the cramped kitchen. The aromas of spiced stewed vegetables and freshly baked flatbread filled the room, intermingling with the faint strains of an old lullaby that Zara hummed, a tune that had been sung to her since childhood, now echoing as a lullaby for her children too. As breakfast ended, the day beckoned with its silent promise of tests to come. The siblings readied themselves for their first day at Riverton High, a grand old building made of weathered brick and narrow windows that seemed to peer suspiciously at new arrivals. Kai adjusted the strap of his worn backpack, his eyes narrowed in quiet resolve. Lila, with her chin lifted ever so slightly, took a moment to steady herself before stepping out onto the sidewalk. Their movements were synchronized, the result of countless hours spent perfecting their discipline and honing a keen awareness of their surroundings, a skill not only born of training but necessity. The walk to school was a slow procession, marked by passing glances and murmurs as neighbors peered from behind curtains and store windows. Some faces wore smiles of tentative welcome, while others betrayed an unspoken judgment. Yet, beneath the surface of each encounter, the twins carried with them the soft, unyielding promise that their silence was not a sign of vulnerability but rather a fortress built of time-tested lessons in resilience. Riverton High loomed ahead like a relic of history, a three-story monument that had witnessed countless stories of triumph and loss over the decades. Its sprawling brick facade and narrow, time-worn windows exuded an air of stern authority. As Kai and Lila approached the entrance, clusters of students gathered on the front lawn fell into a curious hush. In that instant, every eye fixed upon the newcomers as if trying to decipher the quiet mystery they embodied. A few snickers could be heard among the hushed whispers, snickers that revealed the seeds of derision already planted in the fertile soil of conformity and fear. Inside the grand yet austere hallway, the echoes of locker slams and light chatter provided a jarring contrast to the stillness the twins had left behind. As they walked down the corridor, their footsteps measured and silent, the atmosphere grew heavy with anticipation. Some students eyed them with overt curiosity, others with open disdain. Yet none seemed to know what lay beneath the calm surface of those deep, focused eyes. Unknown to many, Kai and Lila possessed an inner fire kindled by the discipline of martial arts, a fire that gave them the strength to remain composed in the face of ridicule and unkindness. Teachers paused mid-conversation as the twins passed by. Even in the mundane task of taking attendance, there was a palpable tension, names were called out like incantations, and a few hesitant voices struggled to pronounce the unfamiliar names on the roll. But the twins corrected them with quiet dignity, their voices steady and their expressions unreadable, betraying nothing of the storm that might have raged beneath. It was as though they had already mastered the art of transforming judgment into quiet power, turning every snicker and every whispered comment into fuel for their resolve. Throughout the morning, as the day unfolded in the familiar routines of lessons and class discussions, an undercurrent of observation lingered in every corner. Classmates scribbled notes and exchanged speculative glances. In the cafeteria, a cramped, echoing room where the clatter of trays and the buzz of conversation reigned, Kai and Lila found a secluded table away from the glaring attention of a boisterous group of locals whose curiosity often turned into derision. The twins unpacked a modest lunch, the familiar smells evoking memories of home and strength of character nurtured in a culture that revered discipline and solidarity. It was during these early hours at Riverton High that the silent shield of the twins became most apparent. Every challenge, the stares, the hushed whispers, the mispronunciations, was met with an unbreakable composure that spoke volumes of their inner strength. Their quiet presence was not weakness but a declaration that they were more than the sum of others' prejudices, that their heritage was a treasure to be honored, not an oddity to be mocked. In that moment, as the clock ticked inexorably toward the start of their classes, Kai and Lila embraced the unknown with resolute hearts. They knew that Riverton, with its long history and cautious inhabitants, might not welcome them with open arms. Yet they also knew that the teachings of their ancestors, the lessons of sacrifice, honor, and the subtle art of silence, would guide them through the trials of this new chapter. Their arrival marked not only a beginning for them but also a subtle shift in the town's narrative, a promise that even in the face of judgment, the quiet strength of a determined heart could spark change. The day stretched ahead with both uncertainty and promise, each passing moment a silent test of character, each whispered remark a challenge to be met with dignity. In every silent step and measured glance, Kai and Lila were writing the opening lines of a story that would soon captivate the hearts of those who dared to look past the surface, to see the warrior spirit within. Even as Riverton's old walls seemed to murmur with secrets of their own, the twins stepped into the halls of the high school with an unspoken declaration: they were here not merely to survive, but to rise above, to transform hostility into hope, and to convert every sneer into a stepping stone toward a future that was uniquely their own. What do you think helped Kai and Lila maintain their calm in such an unfamiliar and unfriendly environment? Morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of Riverton High's main hall as Kai and Lila stepped into a building steeped in tradition and history, but also in whispered secrets. The reverberations of footsteps against the aged tile floor echoed like the steady beat of a drum, marking the passage of time in a school where every corridor held its own story. In this new environment, the twins sensed both opportunity and challenge. Their arrival had stirred a quiet ripple among the student body, and as the day unfolded, they would soon come to understand that the real battles were not fought solely with fists, but in the silent spaces between words. The first class of the day was English literature with Mr. Carter, a softly spoken teacher whose gentle manner belied a steely determination to see his students reach their potential. The classroom was an eclectic mix of posters celebrating great writers and quotes about the power of storytelling. As the twins took their seats near the back, their eyes scanned the room with quiet alertness. They observed subtle exchanges of glances among classmates, many of whom eyed them with a mixture of curiosity and reservation. In that moment, the room transformed into both a sanctuary for learning and an arena where judgments were silently passed. Throughout the lesson, Kai's thoughts strayed to the murmurs he'd heard outside the bus station. Even as Mr. Carter recited passages from a faded anthology of poems, Kai found himself piecing together the fragments of a narrative that seemed to revolve around the idea of a silent warrior. He recalled his mother Zara's parting words on the bus, the reminder that every challenge could be transformed into strength if one had the courage to stand tall. Lila, sitting beside him, wore a calm expression that masked the storm of emotions within. She meticulously took notes, her handwriting precise and deliberate, a trait honed by years of practice and discipline. Yet behind her calm facade, Lila's heart pounded as she sensed that every minute in this hallowed hall was a test of her inner mettle. The bell rang, and with it came the end of the class, a reprieve that was short-lived. As the students poured into the crowded hallways, the atmosphere shifted palpably. In the throng of mingling voices and scuffling feet, a group of seniors who had long dominated the social scene made their presence known. At the center of this group was a tall, imposing figure named Darius, his sneer and commanding glare leaving little doubt that he was used to having his way. Alongside him were a few followers whose eyes darted about, sizing up every newcomer like predators surveying their territory. "Hey, fresh faces," Darius called out with a voice that dripped with condescension as he stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the twins. "What brings you to Riverton? New kids never last here." His tone was both mocking and challenging. Kai met Darius's gaze steadily, his expression unreadable, a blend of quiet defiance and deeply embedded resolve. Lila, feeling the weight of those piercing stares, shifted slightly in her seat before rising to meet the confrontation. It was a delicate dance, one that demanded neither overt aggression nor submissive retreat, but an unwavering inner strength that had been nurtured through years of training. In the midst of the hallway chatter, a few students snickered, and whispers began to swirl like a gathering storm. Yet the twins stood firm, their silence speaking louder than the taunts could ever express. Darius's voice escalated, his words laced with both derision and an undercurrent of threatened pride, and the tension in the corridor thickened with every heartbeat. Rather than respond with anger, Kai simply inclined his head in a manner that suggested he both acknowledged Darius's words and refused to allow them to dictate his self-worth. Lila's eyes, however, betrayed a flash of determination that hinted at an inner fire waiting to be unleashed. These small, unspoken gestures laid the groundwork for a subtle but significant shift in the balance of power. The hallway, which moments ago seemed like a battleground of words and stares, now became a stage where the quiet strength of the twins began to shine through. The next period brought a different kind of challenge, a lab session in the science wing, where the scent of disinfectant mingled with the faint aroma of fresh chemicals. Here, amidst rows of lab benches and microscopes, the twins found themselves partnered with a group of students who had already cast their first impressions in stone. One of the group, a gangly student named Trevor with an overly confident smirk, made a pointed remark about their exotic background as he struggled to mix a chemical solution. His tone was not overtly hostile, yet it carried the same familiar inflection of dismissiveness that had greeted them since their arrival. Despite the uncomfortable glances and snickers, Kai and Lila maintained their focus. Their practiced silence was not about ignoring the jibes but rather transforming them into silent affirmations of their identity. Trevor's careless words dissipated like vapor, overshadowed by the twins' methodical precision and unwavering concentration on their experiments. It was in these small victories that they realized their true strength did not lie in reacting to every slight, but in letting their actions speak volumes instead. Lunch arrived as a welcome distraction from academic pressures, a time when the bustling cafeteria became a microcosm of Riverton High's complex social dynamics. The clatter of trays and lively conversations filled the room, yet the twins chose a secluded table near a window, which offered a semblance of refuge. Over a modest spread of homemade food, prepared with the same love and careful attention as the meal at home, the twins exchanged quiet words about the morning's events. Their discussion was punctuated by shared glances that conveyed more than words could, each knowing look affirming their commitment to rise above the prejudice and hostility that sought to define them. Yet, even here, shadows of tension lingered. A group of students from the dominant clique gathered near the twins' table, their presence a subtle yet unmistakable signal that the day's challenges were far from over. The clatter of a dropped tray here, a hasty whisper there, and the occasional pointed glance from across the room all contributed to an atmosphere thick with unspoken conflict. For some, it was a test of willpower; for others, it was a practice in survival within a world that revered conformity over authenticity. After lunch, the day's events took an unexpected turn in the school library, a sanctuary of quiet reflection and discovery. Rows of books, their spines faded by time, bore silent witness to the hopes and dreams of past generations. Kai and Lila found solace in the hushed corridors between towering shelves, their eyes absorbing not just words on a page but the weight of shared history. They sought out texts on philosophy, martial arts, and the wisdom of ancient traditions, a fitting homage to their heritage, which taught them that the mind and spirit were as vital as physical strength. It was in the library that Lila encountered a soft-spoken student named Nadia, whose warm smile and gentle eyes suggested a spirit much like her own. Nadia, a quiet observer of life at Riverton High, had long sensed that there was more to the twins than met the eye. Cautiously, she initiated a conversation, asking Lila about her interests and the influences that guided her every step. With a sincerity that touched the very core of her being, Lila shared snippets of her culture, stories of ancient warriors who fought not for conquest but for justice, and the lessons taught by elders whose wisdom transcended the passage of time. Nadia listened intently, her eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and empathy. In that exchange, a bond was formed, a connection that promised to bridge the gap between the isolated world of the twins and the vast, often intimidating landscape of Riverton High. Nadia's quiet courage to reach out resonated deeply with Lila, affirming the belief that, even in a world marred by prejudice, genuine connection could blossom when hearts dared to be open. The final bell of the day signaled more than just the end of classes; it heralded a brief respite from the relentless scrutiny and unspoken battles that had characterized every moment since the twins' arrival. As Kai and Lila walked the long, winding path home beneath the soft glow of twilight, the evening sky painted in hues of amber and violet, they allowed themselves a rare moment of reflection. Every step, every whispered remark, every sidelong glance had added layers to their understanding of Riverton High, a place where every challenge was also an opportunity to affirm who they were. Yet, beneath this calm exterior lurked an undeniable undercurrent of anticipation. The twins knew that within the coming days, the true nature of Riverton High would continue to reveal itself, both its capacity for cruelty and the potential for transformation. Their quiet determination had not gone unnoticed. In the shadows of the corridors, eyes lingered a bit longer, voices softened as admiration replaced derision. The subtle shift, as small as it was, validated every sacrifice they had made and every lesson they had learned back home. At home that evening, beneath the soft lamplight of their modest dwelling, the twins sat together on the worn wooden floor. They recounted the day's trials and triumphs, their voices merging in a harmonious blend of hope and resilience. Their mother, Zara, listened from a distance, her heart swelling with both pride and a mother's unspoken worry. The warm glow of the room mingled with a sense of serenity, a fleeting moment of peace before the inevitable storm of change. In that shared silence, they understood that their journey was only beginning. The battles ahead might be steep and fraught with challenges, but each whispered insult and each cold stare was transforming them into the very warriors their ancestors had envisioned. The day's lessons had taught them that courage was not the absence of fear, but the quiet, deliberate choice to rise each time they were knocked down. Their silent strength, built over years of disciplined training, was their most formidable weapon, and with it, they were ready to confront whatever new obstacles might emerge from the dim corridors of Riverton High. How do you think the bond between Kai, Lila, and Nadia will shape the unfolding narrative at Riverton High? The atmosphere at Riverton High grew increasingly charged with a sense of mystery and danger. In the days following their initial encounters with hostility in the hallways, Kai and Lila began to notice subtle, almost imperceptible signs that something darker stirred beneath the facade of their school. It started with small details, a series of cryptic marks etched into the worn wood of an old bench, a faded symbol scrawled in the margins of a neglected bulletin board, and hushed whispers that seemed to echo in the empty corridors after the final bell had rung. These fragments of evidence quickly coalesced into a troubling pattern that promised secrets far more sinister than simple bullying or prejudice. One late afternoon, while the school corridors lay nearly abandoned under the dappled glow of setting sunlight, Kai found himself wandering through a forgotten wing of the building. His keen eyes caught sight of a peculiar inscription on a peeling wall, a symbol resembling a stylized phoenix rising from the ashes, accompanied by the words, "Silence breeds power." The image resonated deeply with him, stirring memories of the ancient tales and ancestral teachings that had been the cornerstone of his upbringing. Unable to quell the urge to discover its significance, he paused, his heart pounding as he recorded the symbol mentally. It was clear that the mark was not a random act of vandalism but a deliberate signal, a clandestine call to arms hidden in plain sight. That evening, as twilight cloaked Riverton High in shadow, Kai and Lila reconvened with Nadia, a kindred spirit whose warm sincerity had become a steady beacon amid the swirling uncertainty. Over whispered conversation in a quiet corner of the school's library, the trio pieced together fragments of overheard rumors and subtle clues. Nadia recounted an incident she had witnessed in the old theater, a long-forgotten space now gathering dust behind boarded-up windows. "I heard voices last week," she explained softly, discussing something like a secret meeting. "They mentioned an operation that goes beyond ordinary pranks or challenges, a planned event that isn't meant to honor skill, but to exploit it." Her eyes shone with the gravity of her discovery, and the realization dawned on them all: Riverton High was harboring a secret society whose activities extended well beyond teenage theatrics. Determined to uncover the truth, Kai and Lila began a covert investigation. Their days, once occupied solely by academic demands and the rituals of survival, now buzzed with an urgent undercurrent of inquiry. Every seemingly insignificant detail became a clue: an unattended notebook in a rarely used storage room, overheard snippets of hushed conversation in secluded hallways, and even the peculiar behavior of certain seniors whose smug confidence now smacked of menace. The twins noted that these indicators converged around particular areas of the school: the back corridors near the science labs, the disused auditorium with its faded red curtains, and a narrow passageway behind the art rooms. One crisp autumn day, as the leaves outside danced in a chilly wind, the twins slipped away after classes under the pretext of staying late for extra study sessions. They made their way to the abandoned theater, where the murmur of distant voices floated through partially cracked doors. Cautiously, Kai and Lila crept inside. The theater's interior, cloaked in shadows, told tales of a glorious past now tarnished by neglect. Amid the silence and the heavy scent of aged velvet and dust, they discovered a hidden door tucked away behind a collapsed set. With hearts pounding and hands trembling, they pried it open to reveal a narrow, spiraling staircase descending into darkness. At the bottom of the stairs lay a long-forgotten corridor, its walls lined with peeling paint and cryptic scrawls. Faint beams of emergency light flickered over old, discarded props and stacks of yellowed paper. In this eerie underground passage, the twins stumbled upon a small, makeshift office, a relic of an era when secrets were traded in hushed tones. The desk, scarred by time, held a leather-bound journal whose pages were filled with meticulous handwriting. As Kai carefully turned each page, a chilling narrative unfolded. The journal chronicled covert fights, secret meetings, and coded messages that hinted at an organized scheme aimed at identifying and exploiting those with extraordinary talent. Lila's voice was barely a whisper as she read aloud an entry detailing a silent campaign launched against students who dared to question authority, a campaign that involved not only physical challenges but psychological warfare. "They were using our strengths against us," she murmured, her eyes glistening with a mix of fear and determination. "Every achievement is twisted into a means of control. Our passion, our discipline, it's all manipulated to serve their dark agenda." The revelation was jarring. Here lay evidence that Riverton High was not just a battleground for social cliques but a stage for a much more organized and insidious plot. The journal revealed names, pseudonyms and coded initials, and recorded dates of secret events that had taken place years before. Some entries mentioned students who had vanished abruptly, their promising talents apparently conscripted into the clandestine operations of those in power. The sheer scale of the deception weighed heavily on the twins. It was no longer just about withstanding the everyday humiliation of being the new kids, or the targets of casual prejudice. Now, their battle was against a system that harnessed fear and silence to propagate abuse and injustice. After a long, tense hour of reading and recording as much as they dared to comprehend, Kai and Lila left the hidden room with their minds buzzing and their resolve hardened. They knew they had to share this discovery with Nadia immediately. That night, under the cover of darkness, the trio met in a secluded corner of a local park, a place where the city's harsh neon lights gave way to the gentle murmur of wind through the trees. There, amidst the rustle of leaves and the distant sound of the city, they pooled their findings and plotted their next move. Nadia's voice trembled with both trepidation and fierce determination. "This evidence, it goes deeper than I ever imagined," she said, her tone resolute. "We have to expose this. If we do, we might finally break the cycle of exploitation here at Riverton. But we must be smart. They'll come after us if they realize we know too much." The gravity of her words hung in the cool night air, a tacit reminder that the price of truth was often steep. The days that followed were a dangerous blend of cautious investigation and the palpable threat of discovery. Kai, Lila, and Nadia undertook their work with methodical precision. They spent long hours poring over the journal, deciphering coded references and matching them with what they'd observed. They discreetly questioned trusted classmates who might have overheard conversations or witnessed odd occurrences. Each small piece of evidence added to the formidable mosaic of a secret society that had twisted the competitive spirit of Riverton High into a tool of manipulation and control. Yet, as their investigation deepened, the pressure on them intensified. In the hallways, the once dismissive snickers turned into pointed glares. In the classrooms, the hushed whispers grew louder. One afternoon, while walking briskly to avoid lingering in a corridor that now seemed fraught with suspicion, Kai felt an oppressive weight of eyes upon him. A familiar sneer appeared around the corner. Darius and a couple of his cronies had been following him at a discreet distance. The encounter was brief but charged with hostility. Darius's voice, low and dangerous, hissed, "Stay out of our business, or there will be consequences." Although Kai managed to maintain his calm composure, his body attuned to every measured breath taught by years of martial arts discipline, the warning was unmistakable. Their secret inquiry had not gone unnoticed. That evening, as rain began to fall in sparse, heavy droplets, the trio gathered once more in Nadia's modest attic room. By the soft glow of a solitary desk lamp, they reviewed the latest clues. Nadia's hands shook slightly as she replayed a recording she had made earlier in the week, a hushed conversation between two students discussing an upcoming event in the abandoned wing. The conversation was laced with terms that hinted at a competition designed not for honor or self-improvement, but as a means to control, to silence any dissent. "This isn't just a game," Nadia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're using fear as a weapon." The chilling clarity of her words reinforced what the journal had already revealed, that the operation reached into the very heart of Riverton High and possibly beyond. Though danger closed in like the walls of a fortress, the trio felt an unyielding surge of purpose. The injustice they had uncovered was not a solitary struggle, it was a systematic betrayal that left countless students vulnerable. Their determination to expose the truth grew stronger with every chilling revelation, every covert meeting, every whispered warning. At the same time, life in the public corridors of Riverton High continued its relentless routine, punctuated by a simmering undercurrent of tension. Classrooms, once tranquil halls of learning, became stages where the stakes of power were silently contested. In one of these moments, during a seemingly ordinary biology lecture, Lila's practiced silence spoke volumes as a classmate's derisive remark about her foreign ways hung in the air. The look in her eyes, a mix of sorrow and steely resolve, left an indelible mark on those who witnessed it. It was in these instances that the true cost of the hidden society's cruelty became apparent, the erosion of self-worth and the quiet devastation of dreams. Yet, beneath the surface of despair, sparks of solidarity began to kindle. Small groups of students, once ostracized for speaking out, started to form alliances. A few brave souls began to share their own hidden stories of exploitation and loss. In hushed conversations in back corridors and around secluded tables in the cafeteria, the whisper of rebellion grew louder. Kai, Lila, and Nadia emerged as reluctant leaders of this nascent movement, a beacon of hope for those who had long suffered in silence. As the days wound on, the tension reached a crescendo. The trio realized that the time to act was drawing near. They formulated a plan to not only compile irrefutable evidence of the underground society's operations but also to share it with the local community and, if possible, with investigative journalists who could shine a light on the corruption festering within their school's walls. Every coded message in the journal, every overheard conversation, every cryptic symbol discovered was methodically documented and stored in a secure folder, a trove of truth that they hoped would one day topple the edifice of secrecy that shielded the wrongdoers. Late one rainy night, as the city fell silent under a veil of darkness, the trio gathered one last time in the sanctuary of Nadia's attic. The rhythmic patter of rain outside mirrored the steady beat of their determined hearts. With eyes that gleamed with a mixture of trepidation and resolute courage, they reviewed the final pieces of evidence. In that solemn moment, they made a silent vow to each other: no matter the cost, they would not allow fear to smother their voices. They would be the light that shattered the oppressive silence, the force that revealed every hidden injustice. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky with tentative strokes of gold and pink, Kai, Lila, and Nadia stepped out into the new day with a unity forged in shared hardship and an unbreakable will to reclaim their school from the clutches of corruption. They knew that the battle ahead would not be easy, and that the enemies they faced were powerful and deeply entrenched. Yet, in the quiet determination of that early morning, there was a palpable sense of hope, a belief that even the darkest secrets could be brought to light if only brave hearts were willing to search for the truth. What do you think will be the most difficult obstacle for our heroes as they plan to expose the secret network at Riverton High? The atmosphere at Riverton High had shifted from quiet suspicion to a tangible tension that clung to every corridor and classroom like a thick fog. Over the past few days, the quiet investigations led by Kai, Lila, and Nadia had evolved from furtive whispers into a full-blown quest for justice. Now, as the evidence they had painstakingly gathered began to paint a damning portrait of a secret network operating within the school, the trio knew that they were edging ever closer to a confrontation that could change everything. It all began one crisp morning when a chill wind swept through the campus, carrying with it an almost oppressive sense of foreboding. Kai noticed that even the early birdsong seemed subdued, as if nature itself were bracing for what was to come. In the dim light of dawn, the three friends convened in the shadow of a large oak tree near the school's rear entrance, a meeting spot that had served as their covert headquarters during the long hours of investigation. Spread out on an old, scarred picnic table were the tangible remnants of their discovery: printed pages of cryptic journal entries, recorded audio from hushed conversations in abandoned wings, and digital files marked with names and dates that could no longer be ignored. Nadia's voice broke the silence. "We have it all here," she said quietly, her eyes alight with a mix of determination and anxiety. "Names, dates, evidence of secret meetings, coded symbols, all point to an organization that has been using this school as a cover for their operations." Kai ran his hand over the printed pages, feeling the weight of the secrets hidden in those faint lines of ink. "They're not only exploiting talent, they're controlling and silencing anyone who dares to be different. We have to expose this, not just for us, but for every student who's suffered in silence. Their plan was as audacious as it was dangerous: compile the evidence into an airtight dossier and share it with a trusted local journalist known for fearless investigative reporting. But the threat was ever present. Over the past weeks, ominous encounters had grown more frequent. Darius and his cronies, once merely snide harbingers of adolescent cruelty, had become bolder. In the hallways, confrontations had turned into veiled warnings. One afternoon, as Kai made his way to his locker, he felt a heavy hand grasp his shoulder. The familiar sneer of Darius was inches from his face as he hissed, "Keep your nose out of affairs that don't concern you, or you'll pay dearly." The threat was implicit yet unmistakably clear: the deeper they dug, the more dangerous things would become. Despite these threats, the trio continued their preparations with unwavering resolve. They pooled their evidence into a single encrypted file, naming it Riverton Truth. Nadia had spent late nights deciphering coded references from the journal and matching them with campus locations: the abandoned theater, the secret office in the disused wing, even a hidden chamber beneath the science labs. Every detail was cross-referenced with eyewitness accounts gathered from sympathetic classmates, some of whom risked everything by sharing their darkest experiences of coercion and manipulation. The file was a tapestry of truth woven from disparate threads, a mosaic that, once revealed, could shatter the carefully constructed facade of Riverton High. On the eve of their planned revelation, the tension reached a fever pitch. The school, usually abuzz with the routine din of classes and chatter, took on an unsettling stillness as rumors of strange activities spread like wildfire among the student body. In hushed tones, groups of students speculated about the hidden forces behind these unexplained events. Meanwhile, somewhere deep within the administration, alarm bells were starting to ring. A faculty meeting had been convened in a locked conference room, and whispers of security breaches and unauthorized investigations began to circulate among the staff. That evening, under a slate-gray sky, Kai, Lila, and Nadia slipped away from the bustling campus. Their destination was the downtown office of Janelle Ortiz, a seasoned investigative reporter whose byline had, on numerous occasions, exposed corruption and abuse of power. The journey through the dimly lit streets of Riverton was a nerve-wracking race against time. Every passerby and every shadow seemed to hold a secret, each darkened alley a potential threat. Yet, with hearts pounding in synchrony, they pressed onward, each step laden with the weight of inevitability. When they finally arrived at Ortiz's modest office, a converted storefront with a flickering neon sign proclaiming "News for the People," they were greeted by a woman whose keen eyes and calm demeanor bespoke a life spent navigating treacherous truths. In the quiet sanctum of her cluttered workspace, filled with stacks of newspapers and old tapes, Ortiz listened intently as the trio recounted their discoveries. Their words spilled out in earnest, a narrative punctuated by moments of raw emotion and quiet determination. Ortiz's eyes narrowed as she absorbed every detail, her mind piecing together the unsettling puzzle of a network that had manipulated not only the destinies of vulnerable students but also the very structure of the school itself. After a lengthy exchange, Ortiz promised to review the encrypted file immediately. "This is explosive," she murmured, her fingers pausing over the keys of an ancient laptop. "If what you're saying is true, then Riverton High isn't just a school, it's the epicenter of a vast corruption network. I'll need to verify every piece, but if it holds up, the ramifications could be enormous." Her words, weighed down by the gravity of the situation, only steeled the resolve of Kai, Lila, and Nadia further. They left her office with a mixture of cautious hope and trepidation, aware that they had now committed themselves to a path from which there might be no return. Back on campus the next morning, an uneasy normalcy descended. Classes began in their regular cadence, though an undercurrent of anxiety was palpable. In small clusters throughout the hallways, students exchanged furtive glances and whispered theories about recent events. Teachers, usually unperturbed in their routines, seemed to keep a wary eye on groups of students who had been known to speak out of turn. Even the hard, angular walls of Riverton High appeared to absorb the strain of the unfolding drama. For Kai and Lila, every moment was now fraught with the dual burden of survival and responsibility. Their eyes, ever vigilant, scanned the corridors for signs of surveillance or for the telltale movements of anyone who might be on the lookout for dissenters. Their once casual stroll between classes had transformed into a guarded march, a silent pledge to remain alert in a world that had suddenly grown treacherous. In this new reality, even the smallest misstep could expose not only them but also the vulnerable students whose trust they had earned. Midday brought a particularly ominous encounter. While walking to a study session in the library, Lila was intercepted by a stern-looking administrator. With a voice that brooked no argument, the administrator remarked, "We've noticed certain behaviors, let's hope there's nothing untoward going on." Lila maintained her composure, nodding silently. Inside, every nerve was alight with the knowledge that their actions were being watched. The threat was real, and the stakes were higher than ever before. The turning point came unexpectedly during a routine afternoon lab session. As groups shuffled between experiments, a hushed tension rippled through the room. One of the students, emboldened by the charged atmosphere, muttered quietly about something strange happening after hours. Their comment ignited a spark of curiosity among a small, intrepid circle of classmates who began to ask subtle questions, questions that the administration could not easily suppress. In whispered conversations during breaks, stories of unexplained disappearances and off-record warnings began to surface, painting a vivid picture of the covert network's pervasive influence. By the end of the day, the evidence trail was undeniable. In a show of solidarity, a handful of brave students discreetly approached Kai and Lila with their own pieces of the puzzle: photographs of clandestine meetings in hidden rooms, voice recordings of threats delivered in hushed tones in deserted hallways, even handwritten notes left anonymously in lockers. The atmosphere was electric with the dawning realization that the corruption had been an open secret for far too long, hidden behind closed doors and enforced silences. Every piece of evidence reinforced the fact that the fight was no longer just theirs, it was a collective battle for the dignity and future of the entire student body. In the quiet solitude of twilight that evening, beneath a sky bruised with storm clouds, Kai, Lila, and Nadia gathered once again at their secret meeting spot. Their combined evidence now formed a robust tapestry of incontrovertible proof, as chilling as it was comprehensive. They reviewed the data one final time, knowing that the moment of reckoning was imminent. Their eyes met in silent, resolute confirmation: they would not be intimidated. The risk of retribution, the possibility of further threats, or even the chance of being ostracized no longer loomed as barriers. In that crucible of shared resolve, they understood that sometimes the only way to shatter a system steeped in silence and oppression was to force the truth into the light. Before the darkness of night fully set in, each of them took a deep breath and stepped into their respective roles. Kai prepared to coordinate with sympathetic teachers and like-minded students who had begun to rally behind their cause, while Lila meticulously organized the files and documents for one last critical backup. Nadia, with a combination of quiet strength and fierce determination, worked to secure further access to digital archives that might reveal even more damning connections, a lifeline that could expose the nexus between the secret society and the higher echelons of local power. As the clock neared midnight, a palpable hush fell over the campus. The trio knew that in just a few hours, their carefully compiled dossier would be transmitted to Janelle Ortiz's office. The act of sending the file was not just an act of bravery, it was a declaration of war against those who had used fear and manipulation to control the lives of innocent students. Every beat of their hearts was measured, every breath a silent testament to the courage that had brought them this far. What will be the immediate fallout when the truth hits the public? In that charged moment before the dawn of exposure, the air was thick with both hope and dread. The network of secrecy that had long shielded Riverton High's darkest dealings was about to crumble, and with it, the old order of exploitation would be irrevocably shattered. The trio, united by bonds forged in adversity and a commitment to the truth, stood on the precipice of a battle that would determine not only their own fates but also the future of every student who had suffered in silence. The night was far from over, and as the clock ticked inexorably toward that fateful moment, their resolve only grew stronger, a burning ember ready to ignite the flames of change. How do you think the school's administration will react when the evidence is made public? The early hours of that fateful morning arrived with a stillness that belied the storm raging behind closed doors. In the dim blue light before dawn, whispers began to ripple through Riverton High, murmurs of a secret no longer safely buried. Overnight, Janelle Ortiz had released the comprehensive dossier, Riverton Truth, to the world. The encrypted files, raw journal entries, audio recordings, and photographs now formed an undeniable testament to corruption, exploitation, and manipulation within the hallowed halls of the school. As the sun's first rays crept over the horizon, the campus buzzed with a disquieting mixture of shock, fear, and cautious hope. In classrooms and corridors alike, students stopped mid-conversation to check their phones, social media platforms lit up with posts, hashtags, and live streams. The revelation that the school administration, a select group of senior students, and even some community figures had colluded in a network of clandestine control sent shockwaves through every heart on campus. Within moments, the expansive report was splashed across local news websites and channels. Janelle Ortiz's article was unmissable, a meticulously written expose detailing how scores of talented and vulnerable students had been coerced and manipulated. The piece described a labyrinth of secret meetings, coded symbols, and undocumented transfers, painting a picture of a system designed to quell dissent and profit from exploitation. For many, it was an awakening; for others, it was a crisis that shattered long-held illusions of safety and fairness. In the wake of the report, the administration scrambled. In a hastily convened emergency meeting in a lockable conference room, Vice Principal McKenna and several senior faculty members exchanged frantic glances. McKenna's face was pale, the lines on his forehead deepening with worry as he tried to make sense of the allegations. "We must contain this before it destroys our reputation completely," he pleaded in a hushed tone, glancing at the door as if expecting an intruder to barge in at any moment. But even as they discussed damage control, the evidence was now too overwhelming to hide behind bureaucratic measures. Down the hall, in the library and on every public bulletin board, groups of students clustered together, some in animated discussion, others silent and pensive. Among them, a few of the previously marginalized found their voices, recounting painful memories of coercion and humiliation that now rang with a shocking resonance. Their stories lent even more weight to the damning revelations in Ortiz's report. For Kai and Lila, the catalysts who had risked everything, the campus had transformed into a battlefield not of fists and intimidation, but of truth and justice. Their hearts pounded with relief mixed with trepidation, for they now knew that the fragile balance of power was collapsing, and the ensuing chaos would test every ounce of their resilience. The first public manifestation of the fallout took shape in the school auditorium that morning. A hastily organized town hall meeting was called by an alliance of concerned teachers and brave students who refused to let the voices of the oppressed be silenced any longer. In that packed room, a palpable energy radiated from every face. Some pupils, emboldened by the report, stood up to recount their experiences of coercion during lab sessions, humiliating remarks in the corridors, and even the sinister presence of teachers who seemed complicit in the clandestine operations. Among those voices was a trembling but determined account from a quiet senior who had lost a close friend under mysterious circumstances, a friend whose disappearance now took on a far grimmer meaning in light of the evidence. Parents, too, gathered outside the auditorium, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and anger. Conversations bubbled with outrage as community members demanded accountability. Local law enforcement, having been alerted by the sudden flurry of complaints and mounting evidence, cautiously stepped in. By mid-morning, a contingent of state troopers and even FBI agents had arrived on campus, their presence a grim promise that this matter would be investigated thoroughly. The once orderly corridors of Riverton High were now scenes of controlled chaos, as officials cordoned off areas and began collecting testimonies. In the midst of this unfolding drama, Darius and his fellow conspirators attempted to maintain their composure. Yet even they could not ignore the reality of the situation. In a sterile meeting room set aside for crisis management, a group of school officials, some of whom had long taken for granted their positions of unchecked authority, were forced to confront the damning files. Their voices, once sharp with derision, were now subdued. Fingers trembled over the edges of polished conference tables as they whispered apologies to one another, some even expressed regret, though it was too little, too late. The network's far-reaching influence, stretching well beyond the school's walls into local government and business circles, began to crumble as layers of deception peeled away, revealing the ugly truth beneath. At the same time, the student body found itself at a crossroads. The collective sense of betrayal and humiliation was tempered by an emerging desire to rebuild. Informal assemblies, sparked by the courage of a few opinion leaders, soon transformed into organized meetings. In the library's back room, a now familiar trio, Kai, Lila, and Nadia, sat together with a small group of peers. They spoke not only of the injustice but also of hope, of ideas for a new order based on transparency, mutual respect, and collective empowerment. "We have a chance to redefine what Riverton High stands for," Lila told them, her voice steady despite the hardships. "Let's ensure that every single voice here is heard and that this dark chapter is never repeated." Applause and murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, a beacon of solidarity amid the lingering shadows of exploitation. News of the expose seeped beyond the confines of the school. Local newspapers and television channels picked up the story, interviewing students, teachers, and community leaders. Janelle Ortiz, now a sought-after figure of integrity in journalism, continued to follow every new development, her subsequent reports painting an ever more detailed picture of systemic corruption. The public outrage swelled, a tidal wave of indignation that made it clear that the people of Riverton would no longer tolerate silence in the face of injustice. As the day progressed, the pressure on those at the helm intensified. Mayor Hastings, once a seemingly untouchable pillar of local authority, found himself at the center of a political maelstrom. His office was besieged by angry constituents and sharp-tongued reporters demanding answers about the secret dealings and the exploitation of the school's most vulnerable. In interviews recorded later that day, a visibly shaken Mayor Hastings admitted that mistakes had been made, but his words rang hollow to a public that now expected nothing short of accountability and reform. Amid the chaos, Kai and Lila remained steadfast. They discreetly facilitated safe spaces on campus for open dialogue, ensuring that those who had once been silenced now had a platform to share their stories and demand change. In quiet conversations and impassioned speeches, the twins urged their classmates to transition their fear into action, to hold those responsible for the network of corruption to account, and to reclaim their school as a place of learning rather than manipulation. Their quiet, disciplined resistance had grown into a movement, a collective struggle for dignity that transcended individual differences and united diverse voices under a common banner. Yet, even as hope began to surface, the threat of retaliation lingered like an ominous shadow. There were still those who, desperate to maintain their grip on power, conspired in back rooms and locked offices to launch countermeasures. Rumors of secret meetings to cleanse the dissenters had begun to circulate among the conspirators, and a few armed figures had been spotted near the school's perimeter. Tension escalated into moments of near violence as discreet patrols were dispatched by local law enforcement to ensure that order was maintained. The entire community braced itself for what might come next, a clash of old regimes against a rising tide of truth. In one particularly charged moment later that afternoon, a group of students, emboldened by the surge of solidarity, marched from the auditorium to the principal's office, a symbolic gesture meant to demand transparency and an overhaul of the administration. Their determined chants filled the air, "No more silence. We are the truth." The rallying cry was heard by nearly everyone on campus, and even those who had once dared not speak out found courage in the collective voice. Teachers who had once hesitated now stepped forward to support their pupils, defying orders to remain silent, while a few administrators were escorted from public view. For Kai and Lila, each moment of the day was a crucible, a test of not just their physical endurance but of their resolve to uphold the values that had carried them thus far. Late in the day, as the campus settled into a temporary lull, the twins slipped into the quieter spaces of an abandoned courtyard. Beneath the shadow of an old clock tower, they exchanged a look that spoke of both exhaustion and determination. "Today, we have witnessed the beginning of change," Kai said softly, his eyes reflecting both relief and a deep-seated resolve. "But this is just the start. There is still so much to do." Lila nodded, her hand gently resting on his, a silent promise that they would stand together through whatever trials lay ahead. As twilight descended, painting the sky with hues of deep purple and gold, the community's response had transformed from shock to action. The evidence was irrefutable, and the calls for justice reverberated through every street, every home, and every corner of Riverton. Law enforcement expanded their investigation, promising that those culpable, regardless of their position, would be brought to trial. The once unassailable network of power was crumbling, replaced by an unprecedented unity among students, teachers, and community members alike. In the stillness that followed the day's tumult, as the campus and city tried to find a semblance of calm, Kai, Lila, and Nadia regrouped in their safe haven, a small, nondescript classroom after hours, where they continued to document updates and strategize for the coming days. Their voices, low and resolute, wove plans not just for immediate action, but for a comprehensive reform of a system that had long thrived in secrecy. Their discussions spanned ideas for new school policies, community outreach programs, and even plans to form a student-led oversight committee to ensure that the shadows of the past would not return. In that moment, as the darkness pressed in and the room glowed with the soft light of a single desk lamp, the trio knew that every victory, however small, was a step toward a future where truth reigned supreme. The journey ahead was fraught with risks and uncertainties, but they had already set in motion a transformation that no force could easily reverse. The bonds they had forged, and the courage they had instilled in a once quiet community, would serve as the foundation for a new chapter in Riverton's history. How will these seismic revelations reshape the future of Riverton High and its community? In the weeks following the explosive revelations at Riverton High, the campus transformed from a battleground of whispered fears and hidden agendas into a crucible for renewal. The early autumn air, once laden with apprehension and whispered threats, now carried a brisk promise of change. At the heart of this transformation were Kai, Lila, and Nadia, the trio whose unwavering courage had unearthed secrets and shattered the oppressive silence that had reigned for far too long. The morning after the town hall meeting, when state troopers and federal agents began taking statements and making arrests, the atmosphere on campus was heavy with both melancholy and hope. The evidence leaked into the public sphere had forced a reckoning. Riverton High's aging walls, which had witnessed decades of quiet subjugation, now echoed with the voices of students and teachers determined to reconstruct the community with transparency and justice. In the aftermath, there was palpable tension in every corridor as those who had once lived in fear now stepped into the light. Yet, as the first rays of autumn's sun filtered through tall windows in the renovated library, a new spirit was unmistakably emerging. It began with small but significant acts of defiance and unity. A group of formerly silenced students, emboldened by the exposure of the clandestine network, organized a petition demanding the resignation of implicated administrators. At first, the effort was met with skepticism, but as more classmates joined the cause and evidence continued to surface, the petition quickly grew in numbers. Teachers, too, joined in. Several faculty members, long burdened by the guilt of complicity or the silence of fear, publicly apologized for their part in enabling a system that had exploited vulnerable talents. In faculty meetings that were once hushed and compliant, passionate debates now filled the room, and a new slate of policies began to take shape. The old guard, embodied by figures such as Vice Principal McKenna and even Mayor Hastings, was facing a crisis of legitimacy. In emergency sessions held by the local school board, intense discussions unfolded regarding the need for independent oversight and strict ethical guidelines. The board's final resolution, passed after days of fervent debate, established a new independent review committee comprised of respected educators, local community leaders, and even a few courageous students. This committee's mandate was clear: ensure that every future decision was subject to transparency and accountability, and guarantee that the rights of students would never again be trampled by unchecked authority. Within this tempest of institutional change, the personal journeys of Kai, Lila, and Nadia resonated like beacons of hope. After months of secret meetings, covert evidence gathering, and fearful encounters in shadowed corridors, the trio now found themselves at the epicenter of a profound cultural shift within the school. During an impromptu assembly called by the newly formed Student Oversight Committee, Kai was invited to speak before an auditorium filled with a diverse mix of students, teachers, and community members. His voice, steady and imbued with a calm authority born of both struggle and mastery, recounted the long, arduous journey they had endured. He spoke not of vengeance but of the courage required to embrace the truth and rebuild from its ruins. Today, we stand together as more than just witnesses to injustice, we are the architects of our future, Kai declared, his eyes sweeping across the room and capturing the attention of every listener. For too long, silence was mistaken for strength, but we have learned that true power comes when we use our voices to demand dignity and fairness for all. This is not the end of our struggle but the beginning of a new chapter in which every student is honored, and every voice matters. His words, simple yet profound, stirred a collective cheer that reverberated far beyond the auditorium's walls. In the weeks that followed this historic address, tangible changes began to materialize. The oppressive symbols that had once shrouded hidden corridors were methodically erased, replaced by murals celebrating diversity and resilience. The clandestine areas where secret meetings had taken place were renovated into vibrant spaces for open dialogue, art studios, student lounges, and communal gardens designed to nurture creativity and unity. For many, these transformations represented not just physical improvements but the rekindling of a communal spirit that had been suppressed for generations. Lila, whose quiet strength had been a steady beacon throughout the ordeal, initiated a series of reflection workshops during after-school hours. In these sessions, students were encouraged to share their personal stories of struggle and triumph, discuss ways to overcome adversity, and learn the art of mindful communication. In one such gathering held in a softly lit classroom, a formerly timid classmate, tears still glistening on her cheeks, thanked Lila for giving her the courage to speak about the shameful experiences that had silenced her for so long. "You showed me that there is strength in vulnerability," the girl said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Because of you, I feel like I can finally stand up for myself and my future." Lila's compassionate guidance nurtured an environment in which differences were celebrated rather than condemned, and where every individual was empowered to reclaim their narrative. Nadia, too, found her place in this metamorphosis. The once reluctant chronicler of the hidden truths emerged as a sought-after voice for change. She published a series of in-depth articles detailing not only the scandal that had upended Riverton High but also the slow, painful process of healing and reform. Her writing, infused with both journalistic integrity and a deeply personal touch, captured the imaginations of readers far beyond the confines of the town. Local newspapers, and even regional outlets, praised her work as a catalyst for social justice, a testament to the power of truth when wielded with courage. Her articles served as both a historical record and a call to action, inspiring other schools in similar predicaments to follow suit and demand accountability. At the same time, the repercussions for those who had orchestrated the elaborate network of exploitation were swift and severe. Darius and the other senior conspirators, once unchallenged in their tyranny, found themselves isolated and under investigation. As more details emerged through forensic audits, secret recordings, and testimonies from emboldened witnesses, legal authorities built an unassailable case against them. A series of arrests were made, culminating in a highly publicized trial that gripped the entire community. The trial, broadcast live on local television and streamed online, became a symbol of retribution and transformation. It served as a sober reminder that the abuses of power would no longer be tolerated and that every individual, no matter how concealed in the shadows, would be held accountable for their actions. For the broader Riverton community, the scandal sparked an impassioned debate about responsibility, collective memory, and the future of education. In town hall meetings held across the city, residents reflected on decades of complacency, passionately arguing for reform not only within the school system but also in local government. The old barriers of prejudice, entrenched in years of neglect and cynicism, began to crumble as diverse voices joined in the chorus for change. Parents, many of whom had once harbored quiet suspicions about the mysterious transfers and unexplained disappearances, now demanded a comprehensive overhaul of the system. Under mounting pressure, the local school board and government officials began to implement sweeping reforms, new oversight protocols, transparent budgeting, and community involvement initiatives, all designed to dismantle the remnants of corruption that had stained Riverton's institutions for so long. Within the halls of Riverton High, every day became an ode to resilience. The transformed spaces, the vibrant murals, the spirited debates in once stifled classrooms, and the palpable sense of shared purpose, all testified to a community reborn through adversity. Kai and Lila, who had once walked the halls as outsiders marked by silent defiance, now felt embraced by a school that recognized their inherent worth. Their journey, marked by quiet perseverance and deliberate courage, had ignited a ripple effect that touched every corner of Riverton. They had proven that the power of truth was far greater than the forces of intimidation, and that even in the face of systemic oppression, a few brave hearts could light the way for many. As the days turned into months, the scars of the past began to fade, replaced by the vibrant tapestry of a community united in its diversity and driven by a collective commitment to justice. The new Independent Oversight Committee, with students as key members, kept a vigilant watch over every decision affecting the school's future. New extracurricular programs, ranging from community service initiatives to cultural exchange clubs, flourished, ensuring that every student had an opportunity to thrive. Inspired by the trial's outcomes and the ensuing reforms, other schools in neighboring towns began to examine their own practices, sparking a wave of accountability and renewal throughout the region. Standing on the steps of the newly renovated main building one cool evening, Kai and Lila watched as groups of students laughed and talked, their faces lit by both the fading light and the warmth of newfound freedom. In that quiet, radiant moment, the twins exchanged a look of deep understanding, an unspoken acknowledgement that their struggle had transcended personal hardship to become a beacon of hope for an entire generation. Their journey from isolation to empowerment was now etched into the collective memory of Riverton, a testament to the transformative power of courage, unity, and the relentless pursuit of truth. What do you believe is the most important lesson Riverton High has learned from these tumultuous events? In this final chapter of transformation, the once oppressive shadows over Riverton High are receding as a new dawn of accountability and hope rises. Every broken barrier now stands as a memorial to past injustices and as a promise for a future where transparency, mutual respect, and the courage to speak out prevail. The legacy of Kai, Lila, and Nadia will be remembered not merely as a tale of resistance, but as an enduring call to transform silence into strength, and adversity into opportunity. As our journey together draws to a close, let us take a quiet moment to reflect on the incredible transformation that our story has ignited. In the midst of challenges, suffering, and moments when darkness seemed overwhelming, we discovered that the human spirit is capable of remarkable resilience and, ultimately, transcending despair. The path our characters followed in their struggle to reclaim their dignity and rebuild their community is not merely a tale of resistance. It is an open invitation to look within ourselves and realize that every obstacle can give birth to hope. For every one of you who has followed along, from the first tentative steps into the unknown to the triumphant stand against corruption, know that the message is clear: your inner light, the power of unity, and the courage to speak the truth are forces far stronger than any shadow of fear. In our story, Kai, Lila, and Nadia dared to question the status quo, to expose the hidden injustices, and to rebuild a foundation that had long been marred by secrecy and exploitation. They transformed vulnerability into valor and learned that every act of defiance, no matter how small it might seem, can ripple outward to create monumental change. Think about the power of human connection, the loving encouragement from a mentor, a friend reaching out to share a burden, and the collective passion of a community united in its desire for justice. These were the threads woven throughout our narrative, binding the characters together and giving them the strength to overcome even the most insidious forms of oppression. It was in those intimate, unspoken moments, when Kai offered a reassuring nod in the face of adversity, when Lila quietly organized reflection workshops, or when Nadia courageously gave voice to long-forgotten truths, that our heroes found the courage to challenge and transform the world around them. This story, while unique in its setting and the trials it depicts, carries a universal truth that transcends borders and cultures. No matter where you come from or how different you may appear, your voice matters. Every student, every individual, has the intrinsic right to be heard, to be valued, and to live in a world where truth and justice light the way forward. Our narrative reminds us that oppression often thrives in silence, but it is our willingness to break that silence, and to stand together, that turns the tide. In these final moments of our story, as we look back on the once dim hallways of Riverton High now filled with hope and new possibilities, we are reminded that the journey toward a better, more inclusive world is ongoing. It is filled with quiet victories, courageous conversations, and moments of deep, human connection. The transformation we witnessed was not instant, it was nurtured painstakingly over days, weeks, and months through persistent effort and unwavering commitment. Every small act of kindness, every shared tear, and every word of encouragement contributed to a powerful collective movement that reshaped an entire community. Let this tale be a reminder that even when the odds are stacked against us, there is always an ember of hope waiting to be fanned into a flame. The legacy of our heroes is not just in the changes they wrought on their school or in the dismantling of an oppressive system, it is in the enduring spirit of every person who dares to stand for what is right, to uplift those around them, and to transform isolation into unity and darkness into light. Today, as you step away from this story, carry with you the warmth of its lessons and the belief that love and truth are far mightier than any force that seeks to divide or silence you. In the echoes of every challenge lies the promise of renewal, and in every heart dwells the capacity to create change. Love yourself, stand by your convictions, and remember that by coming together in compassion, we can build bridges even where once there were walls. From the smallest acts of defiance to the grand declarations of justice, let us all be inspired to break the silence that binds us and to be the light that guides others in their darkest hours. Embrace your uniqueness, cherish your strength, and keep the fire of hope burning brightly within you. Our journey may have reached its conclusion here, but the story of transformation and resilience lives on in each of you, waiting to be continued with every act of courage and every kind word shared. Thank you for joining us on this journey, a journey of struggle, triumph, and ultimately, love. We hope that this narrative has touched your heart and reminded you that no matter how dire circumstances may seem, there is always a way to turn challenges into opportunities. Your resilience, your compassion, and your willingness to listen to one another have the power to shape a better tomorrow, not just for yourselves but for the world around you. If you found this story inspiring, if it moved you to reflect on your own experiences and the power of unity, then we invite you to become part of our growing community. Your support not only fuels our passion to share stories of hope and transformation but also helps spread the message that together, we can change the world. Please subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate the extraordinary hidden in the ordinary, that explore the depths of human resilience, and that inspire us all to keep pushing forward with love and determination. Click that subscribe button, share this message with your friends and family, and let's continue to build a community founded on truth, compassion, and endless possibility. Remember, in every challenge lies the seed of opportunity, and in every heart burns the light of hope. Stay brave, stay compassionate, and, most importantly, stay connected. Thank you for being here, your support makes all the difference.